Because that one's closest.
Hey, this is mine.
Oh, I'm sorry. And then... Oh, it's okay. Guys, so this video is going to be a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to start off with just some things that I've recorded throughout the lockdown that haven't fit into any other video. And then second of all, I want to tell the story of how I found my host family. Hopefully it can be helpful to anyone who's looking to be an au pair or current au pairs who are looking for their next host family. I'm just going to go through how I met them and what platform I used and the whole story of how we came together and they ended up providing me with this beautiful place. So the first thing that has not really fit into any other video but that has been kind of significant that's happened since quarantine started is week 3 of quarantine. Suddenly, 2 of my the host kids that I live with, my host siblings if you will, got lice. After 3 weeks of no school, not having contact with anyone else, like we have been in this household, we've been like lockdown, quarantine angels. We have done everything perfectly. We do not interact with anyone, not friends, not family, not anyone. And somehow 3 weeks in, we discovered lice. And so we had to deal with that entire thing. And I had to search myself for lice, which was a completely new experience. And yeah, this obviously wasn't a good thing, but honestly, I looked at it with a pretty positive attitude. I thought it was a little bit of excitement, a little bit of spice to the whole quarantine. It gave me something new to do, which was to search my own hair for lice using a lice comb, and luckily I did not find anything. Our third host kid, like the other kid who didn't have lice originally, we still haven't discovered lice on her. And I learned the word for lice, which is poo. And yeah, so I just tried to take it with a positive attitude, and you learn something new every day. And sometimes it's the word for lice in French. And maybe that will come in handy someday. Hopefully not, though. The other thing that hadn't really fit into any of my other videos is the 2 new types of French food that I tried. One of them I actually had the very first week I was here, which was crepes. I mean, obviously I'd had crepes before, but it's specifically called Crepe Party, where you have a little griddle that makes 6 crepes, and you put the crepe batter on, and everyone has their own little griddle thing. So I'll have one circle dedicated to me, and you put the batter on, you cook the batter, you flip it over, you cook your crepe, and then you put on any of the meats or onions or anything like that that you want to cook, and you cook it in your little circle, and then you put that on your crepe, and you just go through and you make crepes, and there's so many different toppings. And then after we're all done with the savory crepes, we switch over to the sweet crepes. And so this is a favorite of my host kids. Obviously it's a super fun idea, and it makes me want to get a crepe griddle whenever I go back to America and have my own place, because it's just an awesome idea. And we just have this huge blender full of crepe batter that you use throughout the whole night, and it is a dinner thing. In France, I'm finding that a lot of things that you think of as breakfast food if you're American can be dinner food or are considered dinner food. For example, omelets, apparently pretty common to have for dinner. We've had that for dinner. Another thing is toast with salmon on it. Don't know if that's a normal French dinner, because my host family said that they discovered that, I guess, when they traveled to maybe Denmark, I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, but they discovered it when traveling to another European country, and So they don't know if it's a breakfast food or a dinner food, but we had it for dinner. The next type of classic French food that I had during this lockdown that didn't make it into my first food video, I don't remember the name of this. I will ask my host parents and put the name of it in the video or over the shots or whatever, but it's this amazing dinner where you have this special cheese, and there's different types of cheese. There's like the smoked version. I'll ask what the name of the cheese is too and put that over too, but there's like smoked, there's normal, there's one with spices in it. There's kind of like, I think, more of a blue cheese one. And you basically have this machine. I don't know what it's a method of cooking. Maybe there will be a name for that too, and maybe I'll put that also in the video. But as you can see, you put the cheese in the pan, you put the pan under this hot plate, and you melt the cheese, and on your plate you have like cooked potatoes, which you can cut up. You also have charcuterie, like you have all different sorts of meat, chorizo, salami, like pork kind of meat that I don't know the name of. But yeah, you have all these different types of meat, and you basically make your own little dish of melted cheese, potato, meat, pickles. And yeah, this has been another one of my favorites. I really love the interactive dinners where you kind of get to try a little bit of everything and make your own dish, especially because I always try a little bit of everything when I'm trying something new. So I like to be able to try every new meat, every different type of cheese. And so this was another favorite dinner of mine. Third thing that I tried that I don't have a video of, but I do have a picture of, so I'll probably insert it there, was cassoulet. I love this dish, and I think it's because it is so salty, and French food to the American palate honestly does taste a little plain a lot of the time. They're not very spice heavy, they're not very salt heavy, at least in my experience. French people seem to have very sensitive palates because their food is not made with all of this spice and hotness and sugar and salt and all these other flavor enhancers. They aren't used as heavily, so French people are more sensitive to taste and they have a more sensitive palate. But cassoulet was it was so good. It was just like white beans, sausage, I don't know what type, another type of meat, and I ate this the entire next week for lunch every single day. I ate the leftovers of cassoulet. I loved eating it, especially after I went up and down the driveway. As y'all might know, that is my preferred form of exercise, and it can get pretty exhausting after a couple of hours of walking or running up and down this pretty steep driveway. I love coming in and eating salty cassoulet. It has protein, it helps you stay hydrated. If you've been drinking like 5 of these while you're walking like I do, I just fill it up with normal water. I'm not so bougie that I'm drinking actually 5 actual Perrier bottles, but yeah. So cassoulet has been another favorite of mine. Another thing that I love about my host family in particular is that they lived in America for a year. They have an affinity for American food and American culture, and it is tradition in our household to have hamburgers every Sunday night. Tonight's Sunday, so we're having hamburgers. Specifically, we have McDonald's, except for since the lockdown started, McDonald's, isn't open or operating, and so my host dad makes burgers himself, which are amazing. They're like, I think 100 times better than McDonald's, even though that might be a controversial opinion in our household because we have lots of McDonald's fans in the family. But yeah, I love having hamburgers every Sunday night. We also have burritos on the weekend a lot, which is like the Old El Paso brand. They make a burrito package, which I also love because, anyone from Texas probably knows getting Old El Paso brand like hard-shelled tacos. It's an authentic To me, it's an authentic brand because it's very familiar in Texas. It's something that I grew up eating, and so I love getting some burritos. I love getting some American food, some comfort food on the weekends, while also getting to try all of these new French foods. So that is what is new for me in food that I haven't gotten to include in anywhere else. Okay, now I want to get into the story of how I found my host family. How I ended up deciding to au pair at this time in my life is a whole separate story. That will be left for another day, but I had always thought about au pairing after I decided that this was going to be my next step, and I decided to take the leap. I basically did a lot of research on YouTube, on blogs, mostly on YouTube. YouTube is a great resource if you want to be an au pair, which is also why I knew that I wanted to start making videos, because without YouTube, I would not have made it here to France. And so the biggest channel that I watched was Au Pair Au Paris. I'll link that in the description below. Maybe I'll pop it right here so that you can click on it and go check out their channel. But basically it's two girls who were au pairs in Paris, and they started this channel a long time ago, so they've gone on to do all sorts of different things, but the channel is still active, and they basically created a great community of au pairs and put out a ton of information on how to become an au pair. There are a couple of different ways that you can become an au pair. First is you can go through an agency. An agency, usually you pay and they kind of take care of everything for you. They kind of hold your hand through the process. They're people that you can talk to throughout your whole experience. If something's going wrong with your host family, maybe it's a bad match, maybe you need to get rematched, all this different stuff, they'll help you throughout the whole process. The other route you can do is to just find a family yourself on Facebook, on Au Pair World, on, any of those websites where you can match with people and go through the whole process by yourself. So a lot of people feel more comfortable going with an agency. I knew that I wanted to find a family myself. I wanted to go through the whole process myself. First of all, because I didn't want to be spending money on an agency. And second of all, because I knew I could do it on my own. Like, I had all the resources that I needed. I actually started thinking about au pairing for the first time when I was 18 years old. It was right before I left for college that I kind of started looking more into this opportunity. I always knew that I wanted to travel abroad, and I said, oh my gosh, I loved childcare. I had nannied growing up. I had babysat growing up. I was like, this is the perfect thing for me. But I'd already gotten accepted to my university, and I didn't want to give up that acceptance and have to reapply after a year au pairing. It was just not, in America, it's a lot less common to take a gap year. And I ended up just going straight to school, which I don't regret, because I had kind of known about au pairing and had been low-key researching it for, I guess, over 5 years. Not consistently, but it is something that it's one of those goals that I've had for years and years and years. I've done research about it for years and years and years. I knew the basics of it, and I felt really comfortable finding my own host family. I went on aupairworld.com and I made a profile. I want to say, I feel pretty confident in saying that it is the most common kind of free platform to match with host families. Host families, I do believe, have to pay a small fee to use Au Pair World and to actually be able to message au pairs. But for au pairs, it's free, and it's basically kind of like a dating profile. You make your profile, you set your preferences, you say what country you want to go to, you say the languages you speak, you say your nationality. There's all these different kind of basic questions that you answer, like, are you willing to do housework? Or do you have a driver's license? And it comes up with a profile for you based on that, and then you write, your profile out. You say who you are, you say why you want to be an au pair, you say like your expectations for it. And so I wrote out my profile, and to be honest, I was very optimistic about it. I knew that it was probably going to be a fairly easy process for me, because at this point in my life, I was 23 years old. I had a master's degree in education and curriculum development and instruction. I had a bachelor's degree in English with a focus on, children's literature and young adult literature. Like, I was a teacher also, so that's an important thing to know too. I had been a teacher for 1.5 years in the US for middle school age kids, an English teacher specifically. And a lot of what families are looking for when it comes to an au pair is someone who can help keep up the kids' English. Now, you don't have to be an English teacher. Don't worry if you're not an English teacher. That's just kind of a bonus, but they really just want a native speaker that can come and talk to the kids and take care of them. I also had been babysitting since I want to say 12 years old. I'm not even joking. I don't know how parents were hiring me as a 12-year-old and paying me to watch their children. Now, looking back on it and knowing what a 12-year-old is, but I was a really mature kid, so I had been babysitting and nannying for over a decade at this point. And so it was kind of the perfect job for me. I knew I was going to be good at it. I knew that it was not going to be a steep learning curve. Also, my other hobbies that I have match up perfectly with the requirements of being an au pair, like cooking, baking. I felt pretty confident I was going to be able to find a family. I made the best profile that I could. I really highlighted my strong points. I think that I came across as very confident in it, and I chose my pictures. You could have, I think, 6 pictures. Maybe I can include over here the different pictures that I chose for my profile, but I really tried to choose pictures that, first of all, highlighted my experience that I had with children. So I had some pictures that were of me with my students. And then the other thing is that I just tried to highlight, who I am as a person. So I had a picture of me out hiking, building a little statue out of little rocks. You want to make sure that you have a professional looking profile. Again, it's like a dating profile. Put thought into it. Think from the family's perspective. If you were parents going to invite a stranger into your home, what would you want that person to exemplify? What kind of characteristics do you have that you want to highlight? What kind of experience do you have that you want to highlight? I also emphasized that I was looking for a position in France. I knew I wanted to au pair in France because I studied French for 4 semesters in college and 1.5 years in middle school. I really wanted to speak French. I knew I was close to being able to speak it when I had stopped my classes in college, and I really wanted to push myself over the edge to the level of being able to be at least conversationally fluent. And then the other reason why I knew I wanted to go to France, besides just loving the French culture, wanting to explore French food, all of those other great things, the reason that I knew I wanted to go to France is that France actually has great laws protecting au pairs. It has a specific au pair visa. You definitely want to familiarize yourself with the au pair laws in each country, which you can do on aupairworld.com. I would suggest to even go a little bit deeper than that. Search specific experiences on YouTube of au pair in Spain, au pair in Denmark, wherever you want to au pair. See if you can find some people talking about their experiences. See if you can find Facebook groups with people talking about their experience, and just Google your country, Google the laws, do the research. If you don't want to do all that, I thought it was super fun. I thought it was super exciting, but if you don't want to do all that, then maybe an au pair agency is the best for you, because that's the person who's basically done all this already, and they're just there to guide you through the whole process. So, at this point, it was Thanksgiving break, and I was flying back to DC the next day, and the night before I flew back, late at night, I made my profile, I put my pictures up, and I messaged a couple of families that matched what I was looking for. And then I woke up the next morning, went to the airport. While I was at the airport, I pulled out my laptop, I opened it up, and I saw that some of the families had messaged me back, and I also had a message from a new family whose profile I hadn't even seen. And this family said to me, basically, they were like, hey, we see on your profile that you say that you're living in Washington, D.C. We're going to be in Washington, D.C. for a conference this next week. Would you want to meet up? And I was like, what are the chances of this? I am definitely the type of person that I believe in. I not that I don't believe in coincidences, but for me, coincidences have a lot of meaning. Serendipity has a lot of meaning. I definitely take it as a sign whenever something kind of coincidental happens. And the fact that this family was going to be in DC, I was going to get to meet them in person. They were there for a conference. They were French. It really, really intrigued me and drew me towards them. I also had a couple of different families in the next couple of weeks that I started talking to, that I spent a lot of time on Skype calls with, even that I talked to old au pairs with. So I was really weighing my options and I didn't know which way I would go. When it came time to meet with the family from DC, I just found that I vibed really well with them. They are my current host family. Spoiler alert, this is the family that I ended up going with. A couple of things that drew me towards them is, first of all, the fact that they had lived in America for a year. They had lived just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and they had loved it. They eventually want to go back to America again. The kids loved it. The parents loved it. They just fell in love with Southern culture. I, being a Southerner, obviously have an affinity for my own culture, so we really bonded over that, and I could see that they really wanted a true cultural exchange. Sometimes with host families, you're going to find that they really are more interested in a one-way cultural exchange. Like, a lot of French families might really want to teach you about the French culture, but they might not be so interested in your own culture. That's not always, but some families it's more kind of a one-way thing, or some families are more looking for the childcare. I was really interested in this family because I saw that they really were, they really valued American culture. They didn't just look down upon it because it was different than their culture. They saw the different values in it, and they also wanted to share their culture with me. They were experienced with kind of that cultural exchange aspect because they had lived in America for a year. And so that drew them to me off the bat. Another thing that drew them to me is they both work in the university, and my host dad is actually a professor. And I am someone that, I don't know why, I've just always had an affinity for academia. Obviously, I became a teacher. I wanted to be a teacher my entire life. But even during college, like, I would go to my professor's office hours. I knew a lot of my professors very well, and I would talk in depth about my papers with them, about different ideas that I was researching and just thinking about. And I really developed relationships with a lot of my professors. And I don't know, that was just something that drew me towards my family, was the fact that my host parents were both so educated. My host mom's actually working on her third master's degree, which she started when she went back to America. That's a whole long story, but I just had a positive view of them because I knew, I was like, I love people who value research, who value academics, and so I just had this feeling that I was going to get along with them too. Another thing is that when we were there, we spent almost like 3 days together. My boyfriend at the time, who was working in the Senate, gave them a tour of like the Senate and the House, and we sat in the Senate chambers and we sat in the House chambers and did all that stuff. I got coffee with both of them, and then I got Shake Shack with my host mom the third day. And so just getting to spend so much time with them in person was really, really valuable to me. The biggest reason, though, that I chose them was because, why there wasn't, I guess, a question of whether I was going to choose them towards the end, I was very confident in my choice, was because they were more flexible with their schedule of when I was going to arrive. Because before coming to France, I had never left the country before, so that's an important thing to understand, which means that I did not have a passport. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean it, but in this case, I didn't have a passport. I had never left the country before. I had never planned, like, I'd never had a trip planned that I needed to get a passport for. So not only did I have to go through all of the bureaucratic process of getting a visa, but before I did that, I had to go through the whole process of getting a passport. And little did I know that this would also require me to go through a whole process of getting a new birth certificate. That's a whole story for a different day. But basically, I was talking to these 3 different families. I was really drawn towards 2 of them. One was in Lyon. I was kind of looking for a bigger city experience. Obviously, Albi is a smaller town, and so I was kind of weighing my options, but I thought at the end of the day, this is really the only family who was flexible enough on their timeline that I wouldn't be constantly feeling anxious about what if something went wrong with the administrative timeline. Now, my friends and my family know that just because I chose the family that had the flexible timeline didn't mean that I wasn't anxious throughout the entire process with every bump in the road. But it did provide me a lot of comfort knowing that they basically said, the administrative process takes as long as the administrative process takes, and just do your best to get here as early as you can. And I ended up getting here the first week of March when I had wanted to get here in January, and they had wanted me here in January, and all of the other families that I had been talking to really needed someone starting in January. So that's the process of how I became an au pair. If you are looking, that's the process of how I found my host family. There's a lot more processes. There's a lot more steps in the processes to how to become an au pair. But if you are looking for your own host family or you're thinking about getting into au pairing, the first thing that I would encourage you to do is do a lot of research so that you're super comfortable with it before you jump in. And then also get involved in some au pair communities, make some contact with former au pairs, get opinions about how to go about things, and then just make the decision between whether you want to go through an agency or whether you want to do it yourself. And if you want to do it yourself, really focus on your profile, really go through and message like every single family that you're interested in and make those messages personal. Like I would say one family that I messaged that I ended up talking to for quite a long time, I went through their pictures and I said, oh, I see that blah, 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 and blah, blah, and blah, blah, blah. I used their kids' names. I drew all these pictures of Harry Potter, like that is one of my favorite book series. I think that we'll have a lot in common. Really show them that you're interested in their family. Show them that you're interested in them. Personalize things towards each family and really have those conversations, have those Skype calls. Let families know that you're talking to multiple families. Be transparent about the process. They know that you're considering your different options. That's okay. And that's good. That actually will give you more time to kind of make your decision when you explain to families like, these other families have messaged me, I want to weigh my options, can I have a week to talk to them and make my decisions? And then really go all out on your profile. Choose nice pictures, really be descriptive in it. And also take advantage of every part of the profile. I think I'm one of the only au pairs that has a video on there, and it's not like a fancy YouTube video like this. This was before I had my camera. This is before I had my editing program, anything like that. I just recorded it on this really bad laptop that costs like $250. It's the cheapest laptop I've ever bought, which I've actually started loving and appreciating more than I originally did. But I made it on this laptop with a really bad webcam, and I think that even doing something like that, sitting down, doing your makeup, talking to the camera, being enthusiastic, adding something like that to a profile will really show families that you're serious about it. It'll show a little bit of your personality. So yeah, that is my advice for becoming an au pair. That is the story of how I found my host family. And if you want more information about how I've made this whole journey work, let me know in the comments down below what you have questions about. And yeah, I will see you this upcoming week with some new videos. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, especially if you made it all the way to the end. Thank you. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.